Welcome back. In a previous video I talked about YAML, which is a method of storing and parsing data which is human readable. In this video I want to cover JSON, which is the JavaScript object notation. Now JSON is an alternative format which is used within AWS, whereas generally YAML is only used for CloudFormation. JSON is used for both CloudFormation and other things such as policy documents which are used within AWS for permissions. Let's jump in and take a quick look, and note that many of the topics which I covered in the YAML video also apply here. We're conveying the same information, the format to do so is just different. So unfortunately we have another mouthful of definition incoming. So JSON, or the JavaScript object notation, is a lightweight data interchange format. It's easy for humans to read and write, and it's easy for machines to parse and generate. That's what it says, but there are a few differences that you should be aware of before we move on. JSON doesn't really care about indentation because everything is enclosed in something, so braces or brackets. Because of this, it can be much more forgiving regarding spacing and positioning. And secondly, because of that, JSON can appear initially harder to read, but over time I've come to appreciate the way that JSON lays out the structure of its documents. Now there are two main elements that you need to understand if you want to be competent with JSON. First, an object or a JSON object, and this is an unordered set of key value pairs enclosed by curly brackets. Now from when you watched the YAML video, you should recognize this as a dictionary. It's the same thing, but in JSON it's called an object. The second main element in JSON is an array, which is an ordered collection of values separated by commas and enclosed in square brackets. Now from the YAML video, you might recognize this as a list. It's again the same thing, only in JSON it's called an array. Now in both cases, arrays which are lists of values or objects which are collections of key value pairs, the value can be a string, an object, a number, an array, boolean true or false, or finally null. Now with these two high-level constructs in mind, let's move on. So this is an example of a simple JSON document. Notice how even at the top level there are these curly brackets. This shows that at a top level a JSON document is simply a JSON object, a collection of key value pairs separated by a colon. So in this example we have three keys. We have cats, colours, and finally num of eyes, and each key has a corresponding value in this example, which is an array. The top level key value pair has a value containing an array of cat names, the middle has a value which is an array of the colour of the cats, and then the last key value pair has a value which is a list of the number of eyes which each cat has. Now JSON documents aren't limited to just arrays. They can be much more complicated, like this example. Now this is a JSON document, and every JSON document starts with the top level object, which is an unordered list of key value pairs surrounded by curly brackets. This object has four key value pairs. The keys are Ruffle, Truffles, Penny and Winky, and the value of each key is a JSON object, a collection of key value pairs. So JSON objects can be nested within JSON objects. Arrays can be ordered lists of JSON objects which themselves can contain JSON objects. And again, this lets you create complex structures which can be used by applications to parse or store data and configuration. Now I'll admit it, I'm actually a fan of JSON. I think it's actually easier to write and read than YAML. Many people will disagree, and that's fine, but just understand that for AWS usage it's very much a personal preference. And while identity policy documents for assigning permissions within AWS continue to be JSON only, it means that for AWS, JSON actually has more utility than YAML. YAML can only currently be used for CloudFormation, where JSON can be used for both CloudFormation and identity policy documents. Okay, so let's have a look at a CloudFormation example that's written in JSON. This is the same CloudFormation template which I showed in the YAML video. It creates an S3 bucket. Now its structure is the same. There's a resources key and its value is a JSON object. It contains one key value pair, S3 bucket, and its value is also a JSON object. That object contains two keys, type and properties. Type has a string value which defines the type of resource created by CloudFormation. Properties has a value which is a JSON object, and it contains a key of bucket name and a string value which sets the name of the S3 bucket which will be created. Now, an important point to note, while I am showing this JSON document with indentation, it's not actually required. Because JSON uses speech marks, curly and square brackets, everything is enclosed. You know that S3 bucket is inside resources because it's contained within curly brackets. Indentation in JSON doesn't matter, and so in my opinion it makes it easier to read and less prone to making mistakes. Now I still do indent things within JSON because it makes it prettier, but with JSON it's not formally required. Now in the coming videos you're going to get the chance to experience working with JSON and YAML. JSON is used for both CloudFormation and identity policies within AWS, whereas YAML is currently only used for CloudFormation. But whatever course or set of videos you're going to be working through, it's worth reviewing any YAML or JSON which you use to really understand what it does, how it works, and try to learn to read YAML and JSON first, and then afterwards learn to write it. Now in my CloudFormation mini deep dive lessons you're going to experience how to write and use YAML and JSON to write scalable and portable CloudFormation templates within AWS. So don't worry, you're going to get plenty of practical experience. With that being said though, that's everything that I wanted to cover in this video. So go ahead and complete the video, and when you're ready, I look forward to you joining me in the next.